Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm sorry it's in English, but you would not like my Portuguese. So I hope you're all well and surviving COVID. I want to talk to you this evening about professionalism in the construction sector and building confidence through globally recognized standards. I'm Alan Muse and I'm head of construction standards at the RICS. Next slide, please, Bruno. So the agenda that I wanted to go through this evening was, first of all, to talk a little bit about the construction industry in terms of the global landscape. Some recurring market themes that I think are important in construction in all economies as we come out of the pandemic. How professionals in construction relate to the industry and what's important in terms of project management in relation to those professionals, and forward looking, how professionals can become as relevant in the 21st century as they were in the 19th and 20th centuries in terms of ethics, skills and standards. And finally, I wanted to say some words about how I think we can move towards a better industry in that sense as we move forward out of the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the construction global landscape, construction accounts for about 10% of global GDP. In China, it's about 20% of global GDP. In the UK, it's about 6% of global GDP. I don't know the figure in Portugal, but it's probably around about the 6 to 10% mark. So it's an important part of the economy, as we all know. And I think in terms of the government action following the pandemic and stimulus measures to rejuvenate our economies, most governments around the world, certainly mature economies and even in emerging economies, are looking to construction to act as a stimulus measure in terms of its multiplying effect through the economy to rejuvenate economies and recover from the pandemic, not just in terms of the construction scheme itself, but in terms of the social value and environmental value that construction can have. So the COVID impact on construction has been reasonably severe, although I think it's fair to say that in many economies, construction has continued in some form, but there has definitely been an impact. And of course, the impact on retail and hospitality and aviation sectors is most marked. But some sectors, such as housing and infrastructure, have not been too affected at all. And in fact, I've been speaking to many large global consultancies recently, most of whom are explaining to me that actually their problem now is looking forward in terms of the skills and resources needed to invoke the stimulus measures that most governments are talking about in construction. So actually the construction market, I think in accordance with the latest market survey carried out by the RICS, has certain hot subsectors, as I say, notably infrastructure and housing. But generally, the industry has survived COVID quite well. And of course, major global professional bodies like the RICS and other bodies operating in construction are seeing the impact of that as we monitor the construction activity. I think coming out of the pandemic, there are a lot of opportunities for construction because it is obvious, I've been saying, that a lot of governments and private sector in terms of ESG funds and other sources of finance want to invest in construction activity. Construction still accounts for 40% of global emissions. So a lot of that investment activity is now couched in the way of building back better or trying to build back more sustainable construction and think about whole life impact and carbon accounting to a much greater degree than we perhaps thought about it before COVID. And much of these issues, of course, have been discussed in the industry for some time, but COVID is acting as a stimulus and a catalyst to actually invoke some of these measures, as we're seeing from government regulation, which I'll talk about one or two of them as I go through my presentation. Next slide, please. So in terms of that change landscape that is in construction that I've just touched upon, I think there are many factors involved in the changing market in construction. And some of these are driven by governments, and some are a result of market pressures and market transformations. But essentially, the issues of sustainability and decarbonising construction and waste recycling and recycling in general are fairly high on the list of changes that are happening in the construction industry as we speak. I think also digitization, I'm sure Anil will speak further about this, but digitization in the industry, the time has come now to invoke some of the developments that have taken place in building information modeling and common data environments to actually really force change in the industry. And a lot of that depends upon the professions being able to use data in a way that can interface with the technological solutions that are being brought forward. So a lot of professional workflows are being digested and analyzed in order to ensure that digitization is implemented in the industry in an effective way rather than a disruptive way. Industrialization as well, in terms of off-site manufacturing and off-site component manufacturing, is something that offers the opportunity to make the industry more efficient and build some of the much needed homes that people need in society. And then I think there are a couple of issues related to the performance and predictability of the industry as well, because the industry suffers from low performance in terms of cost overruns and time overruns, and there's been many studies into how that performance has affected the attraction of private sector capital into construction, for example. And a lot of that is related to de-risking construction or improving the predictability of construction, both in terms of cost, time, and quality. And therefore, any the combination of applying the sustainability agenda and the digitization agenda and the industrialization agenda may help those factors, but there are also some basic factors in terms of performance and predictability that need to be improved, and a lot of that revolve around how teams collaborate better, the culture of collaboration, and invoking that into contract arrangements in construction, and in fact whole life performance as well, thinking more about outcomes in terms of the whole asset life of the building or infrastructure asset. And then also connected with that last point is safety. We've had a terrible tragedy in the UK in terms of the Grenfell fire, but similar fires have occurred around the world. And as well as that, the safety record of the industry in some emerging economies is not good. So safety as an issue in the industry is part of this increasing performance and predictability generally. And of course, we suffer from a performance gap in construction, which is not the same in other industries that project managers operate in. For example, there is it's been measured to be approximately 15%, the gap between the specification and what we expect to get from a building and how it operates in practice. And that certainly doesn't happen in, say, the car industry, where the car specification that you order, you expect that car to adhere to that specification standard. So this is a large problem in terms of the building and infrastructure industries. Next slide, please. And professionals obviously operating in that industry in terms of architects, engineers, surveyors, project managers, they are in a role and in a model where they get trained in specific deep and narrow training, because that is how they gain their expertise. But from a professional project management angle, the industry has become more complex. Therefore, that has led to a need for greater specialization in many projects. But at the same time, there is the conflicting need for greater integration. And of course, project managers are often called upon to integrate teams and deliver projects. And that's come about, of course, because that's been successful in other industries where we've separated the management from the design. And this is a particular issue in the construction industry, because a lot of thinking around sustainability, digitization, and performance in the industry relates to how the design comes together before we actually put a spade in the ground, because it's so key in terms of decision making and in terms of optimizing the build. And in order to optimize the design process, we need to separate management from the design. And this has obviously created the role of project manager in construction. But that role is much more than a coordinating role. If it's going to add real value to the process, project managers need to be involved from inception of the project, and they need to have a wide overview on how they can bring in digitization tools, sustainability tools, and other tools to improve the construction process. And then we've got this problem at professional level of in view of what I've just said about whether professional bodies should continue to educate and train their professionals down a very technical route, or whether they should bring in more managerial thinking, because even professional roles out with the project manager role demand a more managerial approach in terms of their profession. So, for example, engineers or quantity surveyors may often be involved in a more managerial role in bringing together the various aspects to actually produce a result technically, rather than just concentrate on a technical solution. They may have to bring in and collaborate with many people to achieve their outcomes. And this is another issue for professional bodies moving forward, as to whether we should concentrate more on managerial skills, or whether we should stick to narrow technical skills, or a combination of both. And that's all because, as I've said before, the complexity of the industry and the need for the collaboration in the industry is driven by this need to produce better performance from that integration. Next slide, please. And also from a professional body point of view, or professionalism point of view, you know, why is professionalism important in the 21st century? It's important particularly in construction, because construction is an industry which has major transactions, and major transactions attract corruption and problems in practice. So ethics and codes of conduct and self-regulation are important. The RICS is a self-regulating professional body, and so it needs the codes of conduct and standards in place to ensure that it can self-regulate its professional members. And at the same time, there is an issue in terms of the 21st century, in terms of the fact that skills, whether it be digitization, sustainability, or things we're not even yet aware of, need to change throughout a person's career in order for him or her to stay at the forefront of his profession. So lifelong learning is going to become much more of an issue for professional bodies like the RICS, in terms of how can the person go on a journey to develop the skills throughout his lifetime. And last but certainly not least, that's all founded on a body of knowledge for the profession, because without a body of knowledge, the profession cannot fall back on the way that we perform our work. And connected with that, of course, is standards to actually invoke that practice. That's why the combination of ethics, skills, and standards is so important in terms of the relevance of professionalism in the 21st century. Next slide, please. And so I think all these things give a very positive image of the industry moving forward, because it definitely is at an inflection point of change. And one of those inflection points of change is where the profession and the technologists meet, as I mentioned earlier. And where the profession and technologists meet, there is a promise of great efficiency, more integration, less waste, optimizing solutions before we actually put a spade in the ground. But in order to do that, professional bodies need to develop workflows, data standards, and have an interface with the technologists in a way that's meaningful for the technologists, and vice versa. The technologists need to understand the professional workflows in order to optimize those with the tools that are available now through technology, including artificial intelligence, blockchain, etc. And also, I think that's very important here is that, international learning. We're in a meeting this evening where I'm speaking to you from London, England, but I'm speaking to a Portuguese assembly of project managers. International learning, comparison and sharing is becoming more important because regardless of the fact that construction can be a local industry at a certain level, it's also an international industry now in terms of the flow of money around the world, in terms of investment from either the West or the East, and in terms of what comprises a professional in a certain discipline. For example, what comprises a project manager in Portugal should not be much different to what comprises a project manager in the UK. So we need to learn from each other in terms of honing those skills in the right direction. And if we address these issues, I think that I've talked about in my brief presentation today, we can build back better, as Mr. Biden wants, and as Mr. Johnson in the UK want, and as many economies around the world want. But to build back better, we need strong professionals who are well trained and recognised in the industry. And I wanted to leave you, next slide, please. Next slide, please. A summary really of some of the RICS standards in construction, including International Construction Measurement Standards, which was developed with 50 other professional bodies around the world to allow a high-level cost reporting system to be established. That is the type of data standard that I'm talking about in terms of the interface with technologists as we progress the digitization agenda. And that's been followed up with a global professional statement in cost prediction, going back to predictability in construction, which supplements ICMS with global principles in how we estimate construction projects. And these will lead to better data repositories that can be then led to predict construction in a more certain way. We're also looking at the development of, at the RICS, global construction standards, so that we can establish a body of knowledge that's globally recognized as the way that project and cost managers would undertake a project. And in fact, in that sense, we're quite keen to collaborate with the PMI in the establishment of those global construction standards. So I think that provides a nice segue into Anil's presentation, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alan, for your presentation. I think you talk about two very, very important things in project management: standards and professionalism. So I have here one question that I would like to ask you from our audience. So construction is a local industry. So how can international standards really help bespoke in local projects?
Thank you. Construction is a local industry, but many schemes, as I said in my presentation, are now depend on a flow of money around the world or investment from other countries. And it's this flow of money across borders, which is important to remember. If governments want to embark upon major infrastructure schemes, for example, it may well be that they need to attract private sector finance from pension funds and other financial institutions. And in order to do that, they need to be able to show that they can first of all adhere to international principles. First of all, that they can de-risk the scheme in terms of predictability. And a lot of that is connected with adhering to global principles and global best practice. The analogy here is international financial reporting standards, which the accountants have embarked upon, because that has made consistent balance sheet reporting around the world. That there is an analogy there with construction in terms of giving investors in construction around the world some consistency in terms of in this case, cost reporting. But international standards in construction are important also because it unifies the professional input that's required on construction schemes and unifies the body of knowledge for those operating in construction, which is an industry which, if it's too local, then people do not have the confidence to make that investment in the industry, perhaps, and therefore the local economy could survive and could do its own things, but it may not be able to attract the finance that's important in today's world to develop major infrastructure and other larger schemes where those are necessary.
Okay, thank you. If you don't mind, I have another question here for you. So project management is still evolving as a profession. So is it a truly defined international body of knowledge, and what does it need to look at next?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question because project management is obviously a relatively new profession compared with some other professions, but I think it's a very important profession in terms of improving performance in any industry, and particularly in construction because it's so fragmented and the need for integration is so high. So I think to define a body of knowledge in the way that PMI have done, for example, is very important. But I think that needs to be brought together with other professions that are working in the construction industry a bit more. I know PMI have talked about being more sector specific because there is an element of project management that is general and there is an element of project management that I think is sectorally specific. And I think a combination and working with other professional bodies in the construction sector, for example, would enhance the offering for project managers in that sector, even though I accept that project management is a pan-sector management issue. I do feel that certainly our experience as a professional body is that if it's then combined with other specific issues in construction, such as contract management, for example, or the particular issues that arise in construction, that's a stronger project management body of knowledge.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. So I would like now to introduce our second speaker, Anil Shoni. Anil is a program leader, construction for the Royal Institution of Shetty Surveyors. He leads the MRICS initiative and strategy, placing and positioning the institution within a field of quality, surveying and project management of construction and infrastructure projects globally. His primary focus in global strategic partnerships. Anil is involved in the production of the construction sector's body of knowledge, education, and training. He is also a lecturer of Columbia University, visiting professor at Liverpool John Moores University in UK, and adjunct faculty of the University of Southern California. Anil is a project management professional, a fellow of the Royal Institution of Shetty Surveyors, and a fellow of Higher Education Academy of UK. He has a rich mix of academic, research, industry, and consulting experience graduating the US, India, Canada, UK, and Australia. So Anil, please feel free to share your presentation with us. Thank you.
Neil, can you please set up your sound? You're on mute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the third time in the day I have spoken to myself without unmuting. So thank you for reminding me. First of all, thanks for the kind introduction and for inviting me to this debate. really debate, because we look forward to your questions. And I'm already seeing a good stream of questions coming on BIM and blockchain. So happy to address those as we move forward. I'm going to share my thoughts on the next normal and what we think could possibly be a solution moving forward, looking at industrialized construction and the future of work in construction from a project manager's point of view. So what has COVID done to us? Obviously, we have studied at RICS the impact of various issues relating to COVID, supply chain disruptions, productivity drop, cost escalations or increase in cost of various inputs into construction. That's one side of it. Through several polls that Alan was involved in, we found that about 10 to 14% average drop in productivity due to various COVID-related social distancing issues, other labor planning issues that came up. So that's one side of what it did to the construction sector. But on the other side, we all saw a rapid acceleration in the embracement of technology in construction. Here is one example from the US. A large US company called Gilbane started very quickly. They, I believe, were planning to deploy these wearable sensors on their site workers, but it became a priority and it was deployed during, I think, about a year ago, that every worker on site had this device through which they can track the location very accurately and see whether social distancing norms were being followed or not. And they were also able to find out whether the plans that they had in place, for example, staggered shifts, location-based deployment of labor, all those were being followed or not. So that's an example of how quickly our sector jumped in and embraced some of these digital tools. We also saw the use of AI-based tools such as these, where you can actually very quickly, this tool was earlier being used for safety, construction site safety, but then it certainly became very useful during social distancing practices times, whether folks on site were doing the right things or not. So another example of use of technology on the site. This is an example of another large US company called DPR. They started doing virtual inspections for their projects as COVID hit. So another quick innovation in this construction sector. Here's an example from very close to where I am in Maine. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. This is actually a virtual photoshopped virtual groundbreaking without coming close to each other. The project groundbreaking is happening in a virtual setting. Another interesting display of use of technology. So really what we saw was a journey that was being planned, maybe perhaps at a much slower pace, started taking much faster sort of approach within our sector. So we started looking at Industry 4.0 and seeing how we can reflect, adopt, and adapt that into the construction sector. So there came this idea of Construction 4.0, or famously called industrialized construction, where we go by the emerging trends and technologies seen in Industry 4.0 and put them into use on construction projects. Industry 4.0 truly is nothing but a confluence of trends and technologies that promise to reshape the way things are made. So can we use same trends and technologies in a glued up approach, in an integrated approach, to reshape how construction projects are designed, constructed, commissioned, delivered, and operated? So that's really what industrialized construction is. And as a project manager, it is crucial to understand the implications of Industry 4.0 and Construction 4.0. So I have a working definition of industrialized construction. We call industrialized construction or construction 4.0 a paradigm that uses cyber physical systems, aka these days a very fancy term called digital twins. So we use digital twins, Internet of Things, data and services, IoTs, to link the digital layer for a project consisting of probably BIM and CDE with the physical layer, which consists of the asset as it starts getting constructed. You create this bi-directional link, and you look at the asset over its whole of life to create an interconnected environment, integrating organizations, processes, and information to efficiently design, construct, and operate assets. That's a very longish, confusing definition perhaps, and that's why I've used all colors available to me to figure out what the definition says. So what is it? It's a paradigm. What does it use? It uses digital twins and IoTs, or Internet of Data Services, things, data, and services. How does it work? It works by combining, connecting bidirectionally the digital layer or digital replica or the digital representation with the physical layer, which is the asset that is being constructed on site over its whole of life. And then what does it do? It helps you integrate, create an interconnected environment, connecting organizations, processes, and information. And how does it help? It basically improves the way we design, construct, and operate in our projects. So essentially, that's what industrialized construction or construction 4.0 is. As I said, it's a working definition, so perhaps can be improved, things added, changed, and modified, but seems like a good starting point. So essentially, industrialized construction to us is a framework which deploys all trends and technologies that you see in Industry 4.0, but in a construction project. So really you have a digital layer, which is sitting on top, where you will have a model-centric way of working, either through building information modeling, BIM, a cloud-based common data environment or CDE, perhaps use digital twins as well to make a connection with the physical layer, which is your construction site. I do understand that in the beginning, during the early stages of a project, there may be nothing on a construction site, but as things progress, we join up the physical layer by using a whole host of Industry 4.0 technologies. And in between these two layers sit a toolkit of various digital tools. So on the physical layer, you can see worker sensors or wearable sensors. You can see other types of sensors that are put into place during the construction process, but they may remain embedded in the asset, constructed asset, as the construction and commissioning is done. Use robotics and automation to do various things on construction sites. I think all of us today have seen that little yellow dog, a robot from Boston Dynamics with running around on a construction site. We use smart equipment, IoTs, additive manufacturing or 3D printing, some actuators, and offsite and prefabrication in the physical layer. Digital tools that we can utilize then to do this deep connection would be all your cloud-based production and project management tools, AR, VR, AI, blockchain, PLM tools, big data and analytics, and cybersecurity. So we really feel that industrialized construction is this kind of working or operating environment for construction projects in which you're taking the Industry 4.0 components and putting them to use to manage projects over their whole of life. So essentially, the three major things that take place in industrialized construction is that you begin to work in a model and data-centric way, no longer in a 2D or a PDF kind of an environment, rather an information-rich model and data-centric view, and using BIM, CDE, and digital twins to do that. To help with the actual construction process and use of digital tools, you use platform and ecosystems-based approach to improve how we construct and fabricate. So we use physical platforms, be it 3D, 2D, or volumetric. So panels, products, or volumetric pods, some kind of a product platform-based approach. And similarly, when it comes to digital tools, we use digital platforms similar to what you probably have experienced either on Android or an Apple iOS ecosystem or platform, where you can buy add-on products, both hardware and software. So today, if need arises and one wants to monitor their heart health, they can buy a little device which connects to an iPhone, and you can gather information. So similarly, a platform and a product and digital platform-based approach can rapidly come up with solutions for construction projects that sit on top of a platform. But more importantly, I think the industrialized construction approach won't work without people and processes. It's very important to think along how the processes are set up, what are the key practices and workflows, and how people react to these changes, and take all of those into account. So essentially, industrialized construction requires you to think about three distinct transformations or changes that need to be done simultaneously or concomitantly. So you need to think of product transformation, delivery transformation, and digital transformation. So really answering the question, how can we improve the way we construct and fabricate? Then how do we develop and use digital tools? That's a digital transformation, but none of it would work if we do not utilize modern ways of delivery, modern ways of procurement. So if you look at the bottom line, business as usual, probably in the product pillar is predominantly stick-built construction. The delivery models are transactional, and the digital transformation, the digital status of digital tools is non-model based. We want to progress that, and a lot of progress probably already made, move on the product side to modular, off-site, industrialized product platforms. On the delivery side, from transactional to enterprise, lean, and then integrated project delivery. On the digital side, from non-model to model-based to integrated model-based to then other types of cyber-physical and integration with digital technologies. So these three should work in tandem to really reach that final state of industrialized construction. So we did some studies jointly with Autodesk where we compared what industrialized construction can do for us. How can we change the future of work on construction projects using industrialized construction? So if you look at the common tasks performed on a construction project, you will see very similar to the framework that McKinsey had developed between manage, expertise, interface, unpredictable physical, collect data, process data, predictable physical activities. If business as usual shows that majority of our time on a project goes in collecting data and processing data, doing predictable physical, unpredictable physical, if we were to move to industrialized construction, you will see a marked shift towards adding value by doing more, putting more effort into managing, into utilizing our expertise, into looking at interface, and so on. So you can see that industrialized construction can give some gains for project managers on construction projects. Then in the same study, we started then looking at what kind of skills and competencies would you need if, say, from 5 years from now, we are fully utilizing industrialized construction, what is it that we would need in terms of new skills, competencies, roles, teams, departments on a construction project? So these were the 5 main areas or roles that we came up with. So somebody who can address robotics and automation. So project managers may have a drone on their project site or may have some kind of a robotic or automation process. How can they work and manage projects while this is happening? Design automation and DFMA, design for manufacturing and assembly, that kind of a role. More and more product platforms and offsite or prefabrication being used would require some knowledge and a proper role there. We're looking at on projects and in project-based organizations in the construction sector where they are now bringing in data analytics role into our sector. Then manufacturing, innovation, and integration leader role are some of those roles that probably would be needed if we embrace industrialized construction or construction 4.0. I'm quite mindful of the time, so I will wrap up here, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you have any other interests or look for our report on the future of work in construction, you can email me and I'll be happy to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you for your presentation. So the title of your presentation is The Next Normal. So we are all trying to find the next normal due to COVID-19 pandemic. So and the construction industry also, of course. So I have right here a question for you. You are asking questions, so I have one. On your perspective, what are the blockers to adoption of industrialization construction?
I think that's an excellent question. Really, we can talk about industrialized construction in the abstract. Truly, there are some leading edge companies who are embracing these ideas, doing a lot of work in this area. Several in Europe are already looking at construction 4.0 or industrialized construction. But more broadly, I think the problem we face is really cultural and mindset issues. So I have come across multiple syndromes. One is called, we're already doing it. So I go to a construction project, I say, let's use a particular trend, technology, or system. And the response would be, oh yeah, we are already doing it. And very well knowing that it's not being adopted. Then you will come across this uniqueness syndrome where you will say, my project is unique, so we really can't adopt these best practices, as Alan was mentioning. So, and then I think really the most difficult challenge in our sector is value proposition. How do you clearly articulate to a project owner, to a project sponsor, to a project manager and a project team that may consist of multiple contractually bound organizations, right? So construction project is an assembly of contractually connected project team members. So how do you make a convincing value proposition? How do you say, if I adopt BIM, everyone is going to save 2% or 1%, whatever that percentage may be? So it's very, very difficult in our sector to clearly articulate a value proposition. So those are the broad blockers, in my view, we feel.
Thank you. So I have another one, if you don't mind. Do we have a pipeline of graduates who can join our industry and help with the implementation of industrialization construction?
Again, I think it's very crucial to think and future-proof. If we are going to take this journey towards industrialized construction, are we going to import experts and skilled workers from other sectors? Or are we going to begin talking about these concepts in our traditional civil engineering, architecture, industrial engineering courses? both at the undergraduate and at the postgraduate level. So it is very crucial that we start designing curriculum specifically focused on industrialized construction. I'm currently involved with Autodesk designing a curriculum, a modular curriculum, which any university can adopt and start bringing these ideas, concepts, principles into discussion on project management. So if you're a project manager in the future, and you have a drone and a robot that's deployed on your project, how do you create this machine to machine, human to machine interaction and better manage your project? So I think it's crucial for educators, for industry and government to come together and start thinking about skills and competencies for the future of construction.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to introduce you our third speaker, Bruno Matos. Bruno Matos holds a MSc in Civil Engineering, a PGD IP in the MBA in Management from top European universities, where he stood out with several honors and awards. Bruno is a senior chartered engineer accredited by Portuguese Order of Engineers and project management professional as member of MRICS and PMI. He has more more than 10 years of relevant experience in engineering construction, including site management, engineering, design and consulting, BIM implementation and management. He is currently responsible for leading and supervising projects and contracts from A to Z, focus on quality and innovation, including team leadership, recruitment, training, design and delivery. Bruno is a board member of MRICS Portugal and diverse committees and platforms on COTEC and PROCTEC. He has been author of reference publications and speaker of conferences promoted by renowned institutions, namely on the new project management methodologies and tools. So Bruno, please share with us your points of view.
So
thank you.
Are you able to see my presentation yet or already or? Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm as quick as possible since you are a bit late. I'm also going to turn off my camera in order to save some bandwidth. So I'm going through the Portuguese reality. So under the topic, the Portuguese construction industry, so project management for sustainable development. So I would like to start with a brief introduction regarding the Portuguese construction industry. So for the ones that are not in this industry, so the construction sector, together with related activities in real estate, architecture, engineering, equipment, and materials, so they all together they are one of the most important drivers of the Portuguese economy. Okay, so in terms of GDP, so the gross domestic product, they contribute more than 15%. Okay, in terms of investment, construction sector represent for our country more than 50%. Okay, we also represent we have more than 15% of the companies in Portugal, and also contribute to more than 10% of the employment. Okay. In terms of it's also interesting to evaluate the evolution in recent years. So, in fact, between 2002 and 2016, the political and economic climate had a drastic impact on the Portuguese construction. Okay, between these years, in which the industry recorded a cumulated loss of around 50%. This is in terms of employment and also in terms of GDP. Okay. In fact, the recovery started in 2017, okay, with the growth that was expected to continue in the coming years, namely due to private investment in residential buildings, okay, and public investment in infrastructure. But then the pandemic came, okay. That was a huge problem, but not so high problem, because in fact, as you can see in this graphic, this basically this graphic of it has to do with the gross value added. Okay, so in fact, despite this pandemic, the construction was highlighted by the Bank of Portugal for its resilience and favorable evolution in comparison with other sectors. Okay, so construction, unlike sectors linked to tourism, such as commerce, accommodation, and restaurants, was practically not prevented from working. Okay, so in fact, in the first quarter of 2020, okay, this is in comparison with the same period in 2019, okay, the value generated by the sector remained unchanged, okay, remains, and even in the second quarter of 2020, the contribution to the production, okay, so in terms of value generated, increased in comparison with the previous year. So this, in fact, construction during pandemic reacted very well. Okay, this is also a graphic, okay, in which you have the rate of companies with drops in employment greater than 25% in 2020. And in fact, real estate, we have the construction companies in red and the real estate companies in green. Okay, in fact, real estate and construction companies were among the ones that less suffered in 2020 with declines in sales and employment. Okay, so on the other hand, accommodation and restaurants sectors were among the worst ones, of course. So it is expected, this is the T represents the year of 2019. Okay, and it is expected by the end of 2022 a full recover of the economy and consequently of the construction sector. Okay, this has to do with gradual control of the pandemic, okay, and less uncertainty and measures to support the state, companies, and families. Okay, there's also, it is also expected a strong public investment in infrastructure. Okay, so this is all contribute, at least to expect to this full recovery in which will reach the pre-pandemic levels by the end of 2022. Okay, so in fact, having this into consideration, okay, what are those that I consider to be the main challenges in the Portuguese construction industry? Okay, so let's start with the market structure and economy. Okay. As I mentioned in the previous conference from PMI, so more than 99% of the companies in the construction sector are small and medium-sized companies. Okay, that employ more than 90% of the industry workers. Okay, so the industry is very fragmented. Okay, and also very dependent on variations of the global economy. Okay, in addition, companies in the sector usually experience problems of financial leverage, so in terms of debt, okay, and also liquidity problems, mainly due to overcosts and delays in receivables. Okay, we have also other things happening in our industry. So there's a strong competition centered on price, okay, which is basically derived from reducing negotiating power with customers and suppliers. Okay, and it is aggravated now with increase in construction costs. Okay, in terms of labor and materials. Okay, so at the end of the day, this implies lower profitability for companies and for the sector as a whole. Okay, there's also we have the RICS here represented. So there's at least in Portugal there's I would say there's practically no control over unfair competition. Okay, so the lack of regulation, I think it's a major problem also. Okay, in terms of labor, education, and qualification, so there's a rate of short-term labor and a great dispersion in terms of qualification. So, but there's little qualification in construction sector in comparison with other industries. Okay, and companies usually do not invest sufficiently in training. Okay, so that is also a major problem. In terms of R&D, I think it is interesting to emphasize that Portugal is one of the European countries that less invest in R&D, mainly in construction sector. Okay, but at the end of the day, this all contribute to several problems in terms of productivity, quality, and safety. In terms of productivity, and now with the topic of industrializing construction, etc., so we are all looking to increase productivity. So, in fact, global construction productivity, and Anil mentioned that in one of his articles, global construction productivity is lower compared to other industries, and has grown on average only 1% over the last 20 years, in comparison with 3% in overall of the industries. Okay, and also the productivity of the Portuguese construction industry is lower than European average. Okay, so this is all a bunch of problems. So the question here is, how can be, in my perspective, how can be the role of project managers in the construction industry? Okay, this fits to it can be this fits to Portugal and also to other realities, of course. No? So as you may know, so by definition, project managers should promote the integration of the value chain. So they are the appointed party to lead and manage the project, having then the ultimate responsibility for its success. Okay, so in this sense, I would say that project managers, so we can facilitate a more structured approach to projects and increase their performance. Okay, so based on what? In my opinion, so by providing experience in coordination, collaboration, and communication, okay, to help overcome issues in terms of productivity, quality, and safety, okay, by promoting best practices and professional qualifications at the project and organizational levels, okay, also by taking the leadership in innovation and development initiatives. Okay, all of these industrializing construction, as Anil mentioned, if you don't have appropriate procurement models that are implemented at a project level, all of these initiatives are condemned to. It's very difficult to succeed. That's what's going to happen. So they can help unlock the potential of digital transformation, circular economy, and industry 4.0. Okay, and also mostly very importantly to promote the confidence in the industry that would allow to attract more investment to the country and also to promote internationalization of the sector. In fact, investment in internationalization for the construction sector, especially for the Portuguese construction sector, are very important drivers. Okay, so they have to be taken into consideration very carefully. Okay, so in fact, there's an emerging opportunity for project managers in the Portuguese construction industry, but also a bunch of problems, of challenges to move forward. Okay, that's what I'd like to emphasize. So, what can be the major challenge for the project managers or for the ones that want to be product that want to go through product management in our industry? So in terms of qualification, okay, I would say that there's a lack of specific, complete, and recognized training in qualification for construction project management. Okay. Also, as I mentioned previously, there is no specific regulation for construction project management. Okay. Usually, methods and practices derived from experience, from experience mostly are used. Okay. Also, in terms of fragmentation and diversity, okay, there's a wide range of different stakeholders in the construction supply chain. Okay, and usually, so the project life cycles are usually very long. Okay, can go from months to years. So now you have, by majority of time, so in IT projects, okay, you have, you can have, it's easier to have short-term projects, you see, and also can apply the agile methods, etc. In our industry, that's a bit difficult. So we have very long project life cycles, okay, and also project managers are barely involved in all project stages, okay. So there's a greater involvement in what we call it the pre-construction phase, okay, in which the project managers are involved in the procurement of designers, contractors, some project coordination, and also value engineering. Okay, in terms of the construction phase, okay, until the handover and commission, in which project managers are responsible for the monitoring and controlling the execution according to the plan in terms of cost, time, quality, sustainability, health and safety. Okay, but there's a very little involvement in what you call the post-construction phase. Okay, in the feasibility studies phase. Okay, also in terms of standards. Okay, and RSCS has been developing a great work in that field. So there's a lack of officially and generally accepted standards for construction project management. Okay, so we have standards like ISO 21500 or ISO 9001. Okay, but these kind of standards applies to all industries and types of organizations. So they are not specific to construction. So as a consequence, so in terms of the effects, consequence of these challenges, it's very difficult to apply homogenize the process to the various stages of the project life cycle. Okay, so usually these processes in our industry may vary between projects or even between phases of the same project, okay, depending on the companies and the people involved, okay. And at the end of the day, this leads to what we call the adaptive life cycle. So it's very common in construction industry to have a fixed price and time, and then the scope is defined as a product progresses. But it's very common in our news, okay, unfortunately. And this leads to greater risk of errors and also a greater difficulty in comparing project performance and potential investments, okay. Now, another interesting point. So, what have been the major tendencies in the Portuguese construction industry, in my opinion? This is in the sense of what clients have increasingly been looking for, in my perspective, okay? So in my perspective, there has been an increasing demand for large and complex projects, for sure, during the previous years, and this the next decade will be even greater. Okay, so there has been an increasing demand for large and complex projects, which have represented an increasing demand in terms of requirements to be met, including standards and qualifications. Okay, also, due to private investment, okay, mainly the foreign one, that it represents more than 50% of the real estate investment in Portugal, okay, has increasingly been requirement, what we call so the integrated management services through the project life cycles, right from the consulting stage until the project final delivery, and then including the transition to the operations and maintenance phase. So instead of focusing on specific project pages, okay, so this saying of the project manager being involved in specific project pages, project phases. So the clients, at least mainly the foreign ones, have tried to oppose this, okay, and to go other way. And also, in terms of among the traditional drivers of the project management, as you know, so the scope, time, cost, resources, quality, and risk. Cost control and risk management have been the most required ones to ensure what we call in our industry, and can also be applied to our industry, other industries, a better value for money. Okay, so better value for money in real estate and construction industry, we use this expression a lot. Okay, and actually, what I'd like to emphasize, for construction project, risk management is very, very important, since each project. You know, this is why the reason this happens. So basically, each product ideally depends on the site natural conditions in terms of space and time. So risk management in our industry is very, very, very important. Okay. So in terms of McLaren curves, you already know this very well. So I would not like to waste too much time on this. Okay. I would like to emphasize that. In fact, in construction, we have a fragmented value chain, as I mentioned, in which basically each party tends to act individually and still uses traditional process, okay, based on paper and 2D format files without any collaboration and standardization. Okay, this at the end of the day generates several inefficiencies, such as errors, omissions, and incompatibilities that result in conflicts, delays, and additional costs. Okay, mainly in the construction and operations phases. Okay. That in turn represent almost 100% of a product life cycle. It's not the design phase, but the construction and the operations phase. Okay, so in fact there is an increasing need for to change, as Alan Muse mentioned very well in his presentation. In Portugal, it's a fact. There is an increasing need to change from what you call the transactional project delivery methods to more collaborative ones. And this is also essential, as Anil mentioned, to implement this construction. If there's not a shift from transactional models, transactional procurement models to more collaborative ones, we may try to implement all these tools, but we will not succeed. Okay, so this is important in order to mitigate all of these issues, as well to change from current traditional process to more innovative and efficient ones. So the procurement models are very important, and also digital tools and the other methodologies to be applied are important. But starting with the procurement model, it's very important the way we procure and contract. And also this also emphasizes the importance of having a construction project manager. Okay, participating in all project stages right from the beginning, okay, to ensure the adequate implementation of new procurement models and of new methodologies and techniques to project life cycle. Okay, so the $1 million question now is what to do. Okay, but in fact, so and this is my last slide. as we've seen, so the challenges for construction project management are many. Okay, I can emphasize, for instance, the increasing need for training, qualification, and standards with international recognition, and Alan Muse also mentioned it very well in his presentation. So the question here is, can we have a solution for everything? Okay. So we engineers and project managers, we like to have a strict solution, okay, a solution for everything. But in fact, in this sense, I think the economists are right. So not the economists, but engineers. So as in everything in life, there are no solutions, but alternatives and opportunity costs. Okay, and in fact, one of the alternatives we can consider, in my opinion, is to consist on the companies to adopt what I call the differentiation strategies through innovation. Okay, this is an alternative that could help us mitigate all of these issues, but it will not solve completely. So there are a bunch of things that are ongoing that are difficult to solve, and at the end of the day, mostly depends on the persons, okay, and the processes and persons, okay. So, but with applying differentiation strategies through innovation, we can actually help promote the integration of the supply chain, okay, through collaborative and standardized protocols, okay, that contribute to increase effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability, not only at the project level, but also at the organizational and ultimately industry level. Okay, but in this sense, and now to reinforce the opinion of Anil, so in this sense, it is in this sense that digital transformation in construction arises. Okay, in order to, and also in other industries, in order to help improving the planning and the management of scope, time, safety, and sustainability, as well as to better responding to challenges such as the shortage of skilled labor, as we talked about previously, and the growing need for buildings and infrastructures. Okay, so in fact, digital transformation is actually a key driver for the construction industry now on. Okay, not only for the IT and other construction, so it also applies to construction. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and we can move.
Thank you, Bruno. So we have in Portugal a huge challenge on construction sector for sure.
Yes,
I would like
solutions for this.
I would like to address you a question,
yeah,
if you don't mind. Why is construction sector so important for the Portuguese economy?
Okay, so that's a good question. So, in my opinion, this is a controversial question, and I think a controversial answer. So, but in fact, as you know, so Portugal has a very little diversified economy apart from the construction and tourism. Okay, now with pandemic, tourism is not very good now. So it's mostly construction. Okay, and why this happens? So basically, construction is one of the things that we know best how to do. That's the first thing. Okay, Portugal has problems of scale, know-how, and capital problems. Okay, to be meaningful and competitive in other areas. Okay, one of the other points is that European funds continue to push in this direction. Okay, usually the investment is for construction. Okay, also the political cycles, okay, are dependent on the construction sector success most of the times, and construction in our country has a significant multiplier effect on the country's production and employment. Okay, so construction is, as you can see, the contribution to the GDP it's very high, mainly now with the pandemic.
Okay, so I have another question that is addressed to you. Why and how do you think project management in the Portuguese construction industry can contribute to a more efficient and resilient built environment?
Okay, so let's start with the why and then go to the how. So I'm going to be very quickly to leave time for other questions. So why? As I told, so we have a construction sector is a very fragmented industry due to a variety of reasons. So there's a wide variety of needs and requirements. Okay, there's also high customization of products and services. So basically, each project in our industry has its particular needs and highly depends on site natural conditions. I think this is the mainly difference, one of the main difference in comparison to other sectors. Okay, there's no economies of scale and very little barriers to entry, so it's very easy to create a construction company and to start operating. Okay? Also, there's a great dispersion in terms, this is the why, okay? There's also great dispersion in terms of qualification, very little qualification in comparison to other industries, okay? And the low level of innovation, as I mentioned, and many investments are often ineffective, okay, with no value engineering results, and also a low level of productivity and quality, okay? So the productivity of the Portuguese construction is below the European average, as I mentioned before, okay? So how can project managers can help? So as I mentioned before, I'm going to reinforce, they can facilitate a more structured approach to projects, okay? And increase their performance, okay? Mainly based on their experience in coordination, collaboration, and communication, okay? To help overcome issues in terms of productivity, quality, and safety, okay? And also take the lead in innovative initiatives by unlocking the potential of digital transformation, in which here is included the building information model. I've already seen in the chat questions about building information model. It's very important and it's ongoing. It's in high implementation now in our industry. It's increasing, okay? And in fact, project manager has the power and the duty to help integrate new digital methodology and tools throughout project lifecycle. If there's no integrator in the product, it's practically impossible to integrate building information modeling and other things related to industrialized construction. Okay, and also project managers have a in a privileged position to promote best practices and professional qualifications. Okay, in an industry that needs greater efficiency, competence, and confidence. Okay, so there's plenty of room in Portugal for professional organizations like RRCS and PMI. Okay, to establish their position in this sector. Okay, by loan benefits such as, for instance, global certification, accreditation and recognition, global standards, advanced training, worldwide network of knowledge and experience, and so on. Okay.
Okay, and thank you, Bruno. And about BIM, I would like to address a question that I have here for Alan, if you don't mind.
Of course.
How do you see the usage of BIM in construction sector, and what is for you the actual state of BIM usage?
The overall state of BIM usage, did you say, Lenny?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good question. I think building information modeling has globally increased in use, but the studies I know most about are in the UK and the US. In the UK, there was a government mandate in 2016, which was actually quite transformational in terms of nudging and pushing the sector into the use of BIM, and that did progress BIM in the UK quite dramatically over a short space of time, from about 2014 to 2016. But since then, actually, BIM has not increased as much according to the surveys. So BIM usage amongst professionals in the UK is standing at somewhere around 60%. 60% of professionals in the UK have used BIM on a project. That may be only one project. And I think that's a good indication of the economy, which I think is, because of the government mandate, most advanced in Europe with BIM. I don't think we're as advanced in the UK as the US in some ways, but in some other ways we're more advanced because we've developed standards to promote the use of BIM. And I think that's a very important issue here. So I think there's two lessons to be learned here from the UK experience. One is that government mandates, in terms of the fact that governments procure possibly up to 40% of construction work, are very important, and governments can definitely enhance and nudge the use of BIM, and I think that did work in the UK. And secondly, I think the use of standards to bring together a management framework for BIM and management framework for interaction of the different aspects of a BIM model, which we're still struggling with, such as cost, time, and design. That is very important, and the only way that can work is if you have standards that overarch that process, and that the professional institutions representing the different professional disciplines work together to actually develop standards that can allow that interaction of data. Because at the end of the day, the BIM is only useful when it transcends design coordination and expands into management action. It can only expand into management action if you integrate cost and time and operations into the BIM arena and BIM interaction. And that's why in the UK, the conversation has moved on to digital twins, because clearly if you can have a twin which represents the physical building or asset in terms of a cyber replication of it, then you can optimize, in theory, the complete build process before you actually do embark upon the implementation of the build process. So digital twins, and then connecting digital twins together to form smart cities, etc., are where the debate is now going in the UK. But actually, I don't want to get too carried away with that, because we're still working on the full implementation of BIM as I described.
Okay, Alan, thank you. I have one question that I would like to address to Anil, if you don't mind, Anil. It's about BIM also, but I will ask you two questions instead. If BIM can help to reducing asymmetry in construction projects, and if you think that hybrid will be the best on addressing projects on the changing in collaboration and integration using 4.0 industry.
Yes,
Is it clear?
Yes, thank you. I think those were excellent questions. So I think in terms of using BIM to break down information asymmetry, there's already a lot of evidence that with the use of BIM, collaboration, coordination, communication improves, which then provides what I call information anywhere, anytime to any of the project team members. So if you're able to accomplish that through a model-centric or data-centric approach, you obviously then attack this issue of information asymmetry, which is deeply linked to the way we procure and deliver projects. So if you want to disrupt the procurement regime, for example, which heavily relies on lowest cost bidders, you probably can utilize BIM as a tool to overcome this issue of information asymmetry. But I think to Alan's point, you can't accomplish that if BIM remains a design tool where clash detection, design management, and those issues take center stage. I think it needs to then progress into a construction tool where a project manager can utilize it for information management, for procurement management, production management, and all other aspects. So that's, I think, my first view on the first question. And yeah, absolutely, I think hybrid would be the right approach. In the UK, as you know, there is this very interesting metric called PMV, pre-manufactured value. How much percentage of your project is pre-manufactured or prefabricated or off-site, near-site, on-site, but done in a manufactured environment? The degree of PMV probably needs to increase from where it is currently. Let's say 10% of the components are pre-manufactured. You want to increase that, but are you going to always get away and have 100% PMV? Probably not. So a hybrid approach utilizing industrialized way of working versus your traditional local regional ways of working will remain. So I think it is definitely a good comment, good question, and I agree it will be a hybrid solution.
Okay, thank you, Anil. So we are on our time, but I would like to address another question that I would elected to you, Hanil, and then Alain and Bruno, of course. What is the training that you would recommend to be able to participate in the effective sustainable project management?
Obviously, I think the answer is very clear. All RICS training, and I'm sure Alan will agree, the training we provide globally with best practices. But leaving that aside, I think there is definitely a need. I see it as the what, the why, and the how. Before becoming prescriptive in our training, meaning the clicks and fills of using a software, for example, I think the training needs to first focus, especially in industrialized construction, on the how and the why. Why should you be using, for example, digital twins, and how should we use them to better make decisions, enhance evidence and data in our decision making? And then follow that up, obviously, with more detailed prescriptive kind of training. But that would be my view.
Okay, maybe I can complement. So it's a very interesting question. So I would just like to emphasize that, in fact, for construction project management in Portugal, at least, and I think it can be a worldwide problem, and Anil and Alan may confirm it or not, but there's a lack of specific and recognized training and qualification, at least in Portugal, for construction project management. And I would say, so there's general training for project management, but at least for specific, that's what Anil told. That's what Alan told us in his presentation. So the idea would be to combine the general knowledge from the project management with specific knowledge of the construction field. And at least in Portugal, that doesn't exist. Okay, so what happens in Portugal is that in a large number, so the project managers in a large number in construction sector, okay, are in a large number in civil engineers with complementary training in management. Okay, but sometimes without the adequate experience in design and construction and the necessary understanding of responsibilities to perform their role as product managers. And this can negatively impact in the way the profession is perceived. Okay, mainly by clients, okay, that can end up to not fully appreciate or understand the benefits an adequate project management can offer. And in fact, RICS has a specific training for project managers and other roles of the construction manager. But I would say so it's not easy to find a suitable training for, at least for construction project management, because the construction project manager derives mostly from experience in the field. You see, you need to have experience in the field in general. Okay? So it's not easy. It's not easy. You see.
Alan, can you give us your point of view?
Yes. Thank you. It's a very important question, because I think project management is at some type of potential point for change here, because in many construction projects, project management has been used, and in some projects it's definitely added value, but I think it's also obtained a reputation for just a coordinating role. Therefore, I think project managers need to concentrate on value creation, and by that I mean they need to embrace digitization, they need to embrace sustainability, they need to embrace industrialization to bring added value to construction projects, because after all, if you employ a project manager, you are paying for an additional person. So this is the value conundrum project managers have in construction. And I think the rise of management science has taught us that project management can add value, but I think that that value needs to be proven to a higher degree in construction, because it's quite a complicated process to get right. And therefore, I think that, going back to what Bruno and Anil have said, we need more sector-specific project management skills to really tackle that issue. And I think the best way to do that would be for the PMI and the RICS to combine on those skills and that body of knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Thank you all. Thank you, the speakers. Thank you all that join us in this initiative from PMI Portugal. So Miguel, can you close the session, please?
Okay, guys. Thank you, Lenin. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Alan. Great sharing, great presentations, great debate, excellent questions, very, very, very enlightful. And I think we could have another 3 hours here of discussion that we have themed for that. As usual, I'm going to thank our invitees. I'm going to thank our moderator. I'm going to thank all of our attendances. You've been great. Quite a huge attendance here with 80 people, more than 80 people at some times. As usual, I'm also going to share with you the PDU claim that you can do in order to obtain the PDUs that come with this session. And I'm going to share this with you now. And I am, as usual, also passing my last word to my colleague, Iselina, so she can wrap up our session for today. Iselina?
Thank you, Miguel. And thank you all, Alan, Anil, and Bruno, for such excellent presentations, integrated, complementary. We have been listening to you as a privilege. Thank you very much for this great session, and we'll continue with your new PM debates and PM talks in the next weeks. Thank you all.